thanks to Alec Foundation for this session. As a person representing industry, I think these are very rare opportunities to discuss our art, handlooms, and handicrafts beyond the heritage talk that we have. And I'm very happy to have with me as co-panelists Commodore Ashok and Priyanka from very different segments, but all working. And in fact, we were to have Ms. Ruprashi also. She's a CEO KVIC, but I think she's on her way. If she joins, it'll be great. We'll have another dimension on how and what are the major institutions that are promoting better market linkage of our rich cultural heritage in the handlooms segment, and how are we aligning that to both the domestic and the global market. I think the domestic market today is also a very dynamic market. Before we go on, I think it will be great to hear from my co-panelists how they and their institutions are contributing towards strengthening this market linkage and value creation for our rich handloom segment. Commodore Ashok.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Commodore Rajiv Ashok, and I'm the Managing Director of National Handloom Development Corporation. I thought I'll use this opportunity to talk about our organization a little so that people who are not familiar with it understand how we are working and what we are doing in the handloom ecosystem. National Handloom Development Corporation is a 40-year-old public sector enterprise, 40 plus. We are under the Ministry of Textiles, and our mandate extends to the entire value chain of the handloom sector. So we look after everything post-harvest till marketing as per our mandated tasking. Now, unfortunately, the organization, if I'm very honest about it, has not been meeting all its mandated requirements. So it's been my endeavor since the time I joined about 11 months back to make sure that we cover all the aspects of our mandate so that we better deliver to the artisans in the ecosystem. So now primarily what we are undertaking on a big scale, which is also a very important task, is delivery of raw material. Raw material in the handloom sector primarily is the yarn. So there is a scheme of the Ministry of Textiles that supplies yarn, and we make sure that the scheme is implemented across the length and breadth of the country. For doing that, we have got 8 regional offices and 27 branch offices and more than 40 warehouses. So that's how we make sure that the network is available to supply yarn at the mill gate price. So this is basically a subsidized scheme of the Government of India. So the artisans get it at the mill gate price of the yarn. So if there is a artisan in say Coimbatore, artisan in say Guwahati seeking yarn, cotton yarn from Coimbatore, he gets it at the same price as an artisan would at Coimbatore itself. So that's a major assistance. In addition, they get a 15% DBT so that the money goes back to them. So they are all, as it is, that creates a bit of a competitive edge for them, which is what the intention is, so that they can better benefit from the yields, from the hard work that they put in when they are working on the fabric. Like I mentioned, I've been trying to diversify. So what we are now looking at is a more holistic kind of a approach, wherein we are looking at cluster development projects. And it is nice to hear that in the budget today, there was announcement for cluster development funding as well, and under the National Handloom Development Program. So we are very much involved in that, and we expect that we will get clusters to develop in the forthcoming financial year. Apart from that, we also already have a pilot project which has been proven for fitting IoT devices on looms. This is primarily to ascertain and to differentiate between handloom products and powerloom products, because we find that is being done a lot, and the price point of the artisan doing handlooms is being affected. So I think once these looms start getting fitted with IoT devices that actually measure the number of strokes and things like that, you can actually make out whether it's a handloom or a power loom. So that we've recently got sanctioned that project. It's for 10,000 looms to start with. We're looking at scaling up to 1 lakh thereafter. So we've completed a pilot for 100, which was very successful in Jammu and Ladakh. We have done it. So we got this 10,000 project. We'll scale up to 10,000 to a lakh hopefully by next financial year. We also are looking at a skill training program because certification is very important when you're doing something, so that while the artisan may be skilled in their own methods of doing that particular weave, it is important that modern technology reaches the person and the person is exposed to modern technology and options in case he or she wants to avail of it. So that is where we come in, and we are looking at certification through skill training programs, which we have already implemented quite a bit in this year itself, and in the forthcoming year we are expecting it to jump quite a bit. And we're also looking at there is a gap in the sector which I could address during the subsequent as part of the session, which is a gap between entrepreneurship and and design intervention. So we're looking at methods to do that as well, interventions in that. So I could talk about that subsequently. We also are looking at creation of NABL accredited labs for the state governments that are interested. Odisha government for one has approached us to look at that. So we are working on that project currently. We're also looking at natural dyeing units, because I feel that if you're doing a sustainable product, then it has to be sustainable right from start to finish. So as of now, a lot of chemical dyes have come into the ecosystem, and people tend to prefer chemical dyes because of their fastness and things like that. And people have slowly forgotten about natural dyes. So fortunately for us now, natural dyes are being created on a marketable industrial scale by regular factories. So it becomes easier to convince people to utilize it, and also the quality is much better. So that also helps in pushing the natural dyes. So we are working on those as well, and also for creation of natural dyeing facilities. That again in the budget has got support this time. So that is a good thing. We're also looking at being knowledge partner to smaller states. We have signed an MOU with Mizoram for their development of the handloom sector. Similarly, other states we are looking at making inroads and trying to move along there. Also, there is an option of institutional sales as far as hospitals and uniforms and things like that are concerned. So we're looking at expanding that. Now, all these, you'll wonder why I'm speaking about all this, but you'll realize that unless there is we were just talking over lunch. Now, unless there is a pull factor, the segment doesn't move. So if you create a pull factor, automatically everything falls into place, and marketing happens on its own, and things start moving along. So once the ecosystem is enabled to act as a pull factor, then everything else follows. We also recently, we are tying up with people who are suppliers to business houses that deal with fashion designing and things like that. So we're looking at fabric lengths being given to them, handloom fabric lengths of different types of weaves. So that also provides regular employment for the weaver, especially in the lean seasons. When as of now, weavers generally get engaged during festivals and things like that. But now with this kind of work coming in, they'll remain engaged throughout the year. And it'll also motivate the next generation to continue with it, because they're assured of some sort of a regular business. So that is very important, because we find that there is a tapering off of interest in the next generation as far as weaving is concerned, because of various factors. We also, I'll just take 2 more minutes. We're also working in the GI sector, which is the geographical indication part of it. Now, a lot of work has been done in the GI segment as such, but not much in the post-GI segment. So that is where I thought we should position ourselves, because it's not a very glamorous job to do. It requires a lot of awareness. It requires a lot of pain to even get that thing going, because there are a lot of people who are not interested itself because they don't know about it. So you start with getting them to know about it, thereafter see how it can, tell them how it benefits them, show them examples, and then they get convinced to apply for it. So it takes a lot of effort. So there are not many people who are into that segment. So we positioned ourselves there, and I think we have done reasonably well. Since July last year, we've conducted almost about awareness camps for about 13 such products. and we have got about 1,500 GI user authorized applications, which is where they were zero. They were GI certified for almost 4, 5, 6 years in some cases, and they had zero applicants for the user authorization. So we've reached that, taken that figure forward and reached about 1,500 in that, which I think is quite an effort and quite creditable as far as work is concerned. As far as, since the session is primarily about market linkage, now what we have done, what we do for market linkage is, one is that we conduct expos across the country. So in which we have weavers, 60 to 90 weavers coming in and displaying their stuff. Now they're under the National Handloom Development Program. Again, all their kharcha pani is taken care of. So they come in, their TADA is taken care of, and their stall charges are taken care of. So they make reasonable profits in this because their overheads are very less. So that is one facility we provide, and we conduct them across various cities in different seasons across the country. This year onwards, we've also started going international with it. So we took the first team in November to Morocco. 20 artisans we took to Morocco, and we are doing one in March where we are taking them to Sri Lanka. And next year we hope to double this number we'll take them to 4 different locations. So that's the general plan as far as assisting in marketing is concerned. And I was just mentioning during lunch that we are also looking at doing exports ourselves as well. So we are slowly starting off understanding these procedures and how to go about it. The first set of stuff we will start exporting in February, in this month, and then we will take it forward as we go along. So by and large, what I mean to say is that NHDC is more of a facilitator for marketing. It's more of a facilitator for exports and enabler in the environment, so to say. So that is where we position ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very comprehensive understanding of a wonderful institution and an institutional mechanism for providing market linkage. I think you touched upon the various important aspects that is needed. You're talking of, I understand that IoT that you're talking about can also help in traceability, which is coming up as an important requirement. You talked about skilling. I hope you're looking at skilling from now what we are calling as the just transition, because a lot of skill areas are changing. I heard that you're also talking of global reach. We'll talk about that a little bit in the next session as to how you're looking at planning to leverage some of the FTAs that have come, and some of them may be completely custom made for the kind of products that your organization handles. I would like to come to you, Priyadarshini. This is Priyanka, sorry. You're from the very different spectrum. It's Aditya Birla is a private sector, but has been doing a lot of work in the artisanal products also. You have been involved in the product development, though from the fiber stage, but I understand you have plans for the whole spectrum of the value chain. It will be great to know, as a private player, how you have been able to, and what kind of results you have seen by the interventions that your organization has been doing in market creation and value creation.
Thank you. I handle business development of Birla Cellulose fiber. We must have seen Liva branding on some of the garments that we buy and wear. So linking our work to handloom sector is something that we have been doing constantly. Product development or innovation, I think it's inevitable, whether it is handloom sector or commercial sector. So to cater to the requirement of the new age consumer, I think developing new products is very essential. And we have been training weavers how to use viscose Modal XL along with natural fibers like cotton, silk and linen for handloom products. So as we just heard about post-GI interventions, we work with the handloom weavers to develop and product diversification of product post GI. That is one of the things that we do. Along with it, we do skill development sessions. We provide them yarn for seeding and do different types of training sessions, give them technical guidance. We do have a full-fledged research and development center, TRADC, in Gujarat, where all the products which are developed are tested for shrinkage, for color bleeding, etc., to give a market-ready product, sellable product to the weavers, so that they can go to market with a very nice, good and tested product which they can launch and export. Along with this, we do have sponsored road shows across India where there are real customers walking in, and in the stalls where they display the handloom products which are made from Liva, and the direct order goes to the weaver. Apart from that, we do different millwicks in our own company, group companies like Jaipur.com, Tasva, and different Aditya Birla brands, where our Liva accredited weavers display their products, and every brand now have a range of sustainable products which is a mandate. They have to come up with a handmade, handcrafted and sustainable range in every brand. So the weavers who are trained under our team, they are linked to these companies, and the buyers, designers, they get trend insights and they develop fabrics as per the requirement of the brands, and that's how we are linking them to our group brands. We are linking them to other dealers and distributors across in the road shows, and we are training them how to use our fiber and yarn to make handloom products. We also work very closely with NHDC team for distribution of Liva yarn across the country. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think both the organizations have very big and powerful platforms, but I think what's very important is to know what has been the impact and where do we want to go. So in that sense, there have been two very big developments this week. One is today, we are sitting on a budget day, and I think in the first 10 minutes of the FM speech, we got to know that there's a package for the textile sector, and it had all the right words in it. It had handicraft, handlooms, it had cluster level programs, and it had finance and trade development for sustainable products. All this should mean very good for the other big development that we had seen this week, which is the signing of the India-EU FTA, which is being called the mother of all trade deals. Between these two, what we are aspiring is to double our market. The Indian market has been around 160 to 180 US billion. For the last few years, our growth has not been too well, but we are aspiring to be a $350 billion market. So where do you see, how do you position the handloom sector? How do you see the growth of it? If not in volumes, we are today looking at a value-driven growth. And in that, all these move towards transparency, traceability, sustainable products. We should be a market leader in that. So what is NHDC doing in that area?
As far as business with Europe is concerned, there are many in the audience who are probably better versed about that than I am. But the challenge always remains meeting the compliance requirement. So because Europe has very stringent standards, it's unlike what we experience in our neighborhood or within the domestic market itself, which is quite an easy sell. But when it comes to Europe, the stringent standards do, act as a roadblock for exports to happen. So one way to do it is, of course, that we have uh, specific clusters designed for exports, because I think that is the most controlled and easy manner to do it. Because once you have clusters focused on particular countries in Europe, then that particular country, that particular cluster can develop products which are required in that export targeted country. Because as of now, there are too many people doing too many things, and I feel it's a bit of a confusion there, and a very few are benefiting from it. So, and there are a lot of middle layers and middlemen who come into play, which affects the artisan's income at the end of the day. So, over a period of time, the interest wanes. So, it is very important that we connect the artisan with the least amount of hurdles to the export market. So I think we will work towards that, and that's my plan for NHDC. And also all these activities of traceability and all that are aimed towards that. Because in Europe, they also expect something called the digital passport as far as items are concerned. So if you're looking at traceability from the time of production from the time of seed till the time of fabric, then there is a challenge there. So you have to be, so we have to address all those issues as we go along, and we are planning to, look at that aspect of as far as exports are concerned. Also, one thing that that the handloom industry has been focusing on for far too long, I think, is creation of saris. Since India wears saris, the domestic market requires it, and the wedding market requires it. Saris have been selling. But if you're looking at exports, then you have to go beyond saris, because there's only that much of diaspora that can buy it. So if you are looking at design, so that is where design interventions come in. So I think contemporary designers need to be taken on board with these clusters that we create, so that we can have contemporary designs and fabric that is desirable in the form that is desirable to the European market in the export targeted country. So that is what I think we will be looking at in the forthcoming months. But I think the budget, like you mentioned, is quite attractive, and it looks like it's positioned for pushing up this market, and it is I think it's well designed for us and our needs. And I think if we don't make use of it, then it will be our loss.
Absolutely. So talking of product development, an area that you have been saying that as an organization, you have a focus with a long-term view of having a greater demand for the products that you're doing, but having a bigger goal also. So how do you think that has moved? How again do you think that can have an impact on at least a higher share of higher value products in not just the domestic but the export market also? Because that's another concern as an industry we have, that our export basket today is still a very low value basket. We are talking of $5 to $10 products, and if we can have more of such handmade or niche products, we can surely push the value further and give the due prices to the hands that make them also. And secondly, since we are here in this platform, which has been a great connect between very contemporary and innovative designers, how you're working with them, and how do you think you can synergize with their efforts to make the Indian products global?
As we know that cellulosic, man-made cellulosic fiber is extracted from wood pulp, and it's completely biodegradable, and the products are sustainable. So it's aligned with the export market demand with regards to the sustainability part. And we do also have a product, Liva Eco, which is blockchain and traceability enabled. So we can, when we scan the barcode, we can know which spinning mill, which weaver has done the weaving, and which spinning mill did the spinning of the yarn, to the forest from where the wood has been sourced. So that is a requirement now of European buyers. They need products where consumer is more aware, and they want to track the product till the ground zero of the sourcing. And along with it, we do have studios in New York, Indonesia, and London, and we have our teams working there who connect us with the requirement of those markets. And home furnishing requirements are with regards to Indian craft is very high. So when we are developing products like fabrics for curtains, cushion covers, etc., which are used for home decor and home furnishing, export demand for these product category is very high. So if colors that are used are aligned to the European market and other sectors, and products are developed in home furnishing sector, I think it's the lowest hanging fruit which can be, the market can be catered to. Apart from home furnishing, fabrics for top wear, tops and jackets is the next requirement which come to us. So we then link these requirements to two specific hubs where they can do weaving of fabrics as per the buyer's requirement, and then we link them through our team to the brands.
Yeah, thank you. I think, as you said, color and fabric knowledge is an important aspect. Being part of the ministry, I have been very happy with some of the developments that's happening in the ministry level also. I think NIFT is coming out with a good repository for an India benchmarked color palette scheme, as also a good library of the fabric. And of course, we are talking of the size India also. All these can have an important and good development in the domestic market growth. For the export markets, of course, we need to understand each market. As you said, Europe has its own unique color and other requirements. Japan has its own requirement. All the markets have their specific nuances to be met. So of course, we have talked of the good things that have been there. So I think the last thing should be on what more can be done, what are the missing links. So if NHDC takes this target that presently the handlooms as a share of the total fabric base of India may not be more than 15%. If we are talking of enhancing that, especially more for better value of our final products, how do you see the roadmap to be?
I think you hit the nail on the head by putting the word value to it, because I think when you're looking at the percentage of the market that handloom addresses, I think we should focus more on the value part of it than the volume part of it, because making up fabric by handloom is a tedious process, is time consuming, and it is an artist's work at the end of the day. So I think we should position it. I think positioning is very important. We should position it as a niche product. We should price it as a niche product so that the power loom can handle the masses, while the niche market can be looked at by the handloom products. And also meeting your, I think if you address the unstitched products to an extent, that will be easier, because wastages would be lesser in that. So I think we should look at niche, and probably even like home furnishings and things like that. They're not size sensitive, and they are not so season sensitive. So I think we can technically look at those aspects, so that we can look at a higher value coming in for handloom products. As far as color palettes are concerned, you mentioned correctly, NIFT is working on it. In fact, it's been our Honorable Minister and Secretary's focus, and they have been pushing this actually, so that's how it's come about. And I think it's very essential that we have color forecasting, which is essential, because for exports, color forecasting for the next season becomes important, so that the artisans can already start making those orders and start working on those orders in advance and those colors in advance. So I think these are the basic things. As long we must remember that we should be ready to pay for the handloom product. Now, that is the important part, even in the domestic market. So one thing that's how we in NHDC got into this IoT device, because the IoT device is one very easy option to distinguish between a power loom and a hand loom. You know, that is like she mentioned, Priyanka ji also mentioned. It is basically, it provides, the IoT device has is linked to a app which the weaver uses, and the person can record their, can take a photograph while doing the job, records a 30-second video while doing the job, and it records it also can be fed in with the weft and the warp that is being utilized, the kind of yarn that is being used. It's geolocated, so the exact position of the loom is known, and it is tamper-proof. So, and it comes at the end. You get a QR code which is woven into the fabric, not stapled, not stuck, not pasted on it. It is woven into the fabric. So when you start the fabric itself, that QR code gets woven, and it remains till the end of the fabric. So the person who's buying it, if you are the customer, then when you scan the QR code with your camera, it'll tell you exactly which person has made it, where he has made it, right down to the last coordinates. So you're that much more satisfied and that much more reassured when you buy it. And this QR code cannot be duplicated. So somebody cannot click a photograph and make another QR code and put it on another product. So all those things have been catered for. Those safety interlocks have been put in. So I thought it's a good opportunity to tell the customers also, because it's important that the customer is educated about this. So I thought I'll use this chance to tell the customer also as to what the product, what the QR code IoT device we are looking at. So niche product is where Handloom needs to be positioned.
Absolutely. Great that we are already foreseeing that and working towards that. By the way, I hope your QR code also captures the fiber composition, because that's another very important development that's coming, that India is going to have labeling requirements which will be talking about the fiber composition. Besides that, a few other developments are coming, that there is a carbon regulation that is coming. So we are talking of a few regulations which seems that it will be a little difficult for the MSMEs to onboard, and that's where the larger players will have to show the road ahead and lead the way. And also, as you have been hand-holding your suppliers for the product development, maybe these compliances are also something you can help them with. But as I had asked him, I would like to know from you also, where are the gaps in what you're calling as due diligences and ways for better access to the global market? And what do you think your organization or you in your personal capacity should be doing more to close those gaps?
So our endeavor and our projects in this sector is making handloom products more affordable. So keeping the aesthetic intact, how can we make handloom products slightly more affordable, and the quality and the perceived value of the product should be intact. So we are working towards that direction. And the major gap where I find where there is a gap between the requirement and the product is design intervention is very crucial, because they have been doing certain colors and patterns since the inception or since the beginning of the craft. So slightly training them to change their mindset as per what the consumer needs today, and coming up with fabrics and patterns wherein it can be converted to garments which youngsters or the Gen Zs can also pick up and wear. So certain colors, pastel shades, and the fabric composition that we are talking about, when we are using viscose, it becomes slightly more breathable and comfortable, and drape also is better, and the sheen increases, so it becomes slightly more contemporary for the next gen to adopt with interest. So I think if we all work towards that in changing the mindset of our viewers slightly to make better products, I think it will be more acceptable. And also I would like to share that I was with one of our weavers, and At the same time, he had overseas customers coming in, visiting, and buying from him in Banaras. So the questions I observed, which was asked by the customer, was what was the man hour required to weave this stole? How many hours did the weavers take? I mean, she could have just bought the piece, but nowadays even consumers are more evolved. They want to know what is the procedure, what is the dye used, is it organic or is it chemical, what will be the impact of that chemical on her skin, and then how many hours did the weavers take. She said that I should know so that when I'm speaking to somebody to flaunt what I carried from India and what I'm wearing, I should say I'm wearing something which has taken 8 hours for the person to weave. And then she said, when you are saying handicraft, I think that is not the word that we should use. We should use the word handcrafted. And the way she took pride in buying that, noting down points of what was the weaving time, what was the dye used, and not one, all of them. It was a team of around 8 to 10 of them, and all of them noted down details about the product, what they are buying. And then when I spoke to them, I said, why are you so much interested? And she told that globally, uniqueness is the new luxury. It's not about the how many dollars or what is the money or how many thousands you are paying for the product, but the real definition of luxury going forward will be how much effort has gone into creating that product. And we should be really proud of that legacy of our traditional textiles and heritage craft that we are sitting with.
Just to add to what she said, in fact, the IoT device, the QR code that we have also caters for this, and it tells the customer as to how many hours it's taken to make it, how much is the effort that has gone in to make it. So that also, I think we've already catered for that part of it. And it also, incidentally, takes you onto the GI website in case it's a GI product. So so we have attempted not to put the GI certificate there because that can be treated as, may not be truthful. So in fact, it diverts you to the GI website, so you can go to the GI registry website and see for yourself. So the authenticity of the certification is also there.
I think that's a great move. I wasn't aware of this. I understand the time taken would also need how just the pricing of that product is also, and to that extent, I think these are great areas to look at in the labeling. I hope the designers and the students who are here would know that the labeling today is also a very important aspect of the product. It will be looked at from the compliance part of it, but it is also a great opportunity, especially in case of India, when we have so much to flaunt through the stories that these products carry, that I think labeling is an area, and I'll also go through this. It seems your QR code has a lot of right tick boxes in that, and but maybe if there's something more that can be added to that, because like in some of our mill-made products, nowadays I see very interesting labeling which has iconized version of saying how much of water has been used, how much of energy has been used, because if you're looking for the export market, these are the kind of stories and narrative that the buyers also like to see, and the consumers also in hand like to know more about. So I think I think we had two great perspectives on one, a government institution and a private institution, the kind of initiatives you are doing and the scale at which you are doing, so that I'm sure the vision is to have a meaningful impact and scalability of the efforts to bring more market linkage to some of the great products that India is a custodian of. Any last thoughts in this area?
I just wanted to add that as far as the carbon footprint is concerned, the Ministry of Textiles has undertaken a study along with, in fact, they commissioned a study for IIT Delhi to undertake for the carbon footprinting of handloom products. Like you mentioned, this is an important aspect as far as exports are concerned, and also it can serve as an additional income for clusters eventually, because then you can market the carbon credits. So I think that also will come into play eventually when you have it on a larger scale and being done in a common space. So I think that also will come in. But I'll take your point for, to include this in the QR code. I think it's a very good thing to do. We will definitely take it up.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Actually, in fact, in today's budget, FM has also talked about how we are going to develop the market and the mechanisms for trading in India, because as of now we are depending on some of the other experts to do this. I think India is building a great ecosystem for kind of leveraging the benefits we have. The craftsmen, the designers need to be more aware of some of these developments, and the best linkage, and the best part is the linkage. So I hope NHDC is putting a lot of this on their websites, because some of this, I don't know, I wasn't aware that the QR code is capturing so much today, but it will be great to know this, because it's not just about compliance, it's about giving a right value to a product through the various dimensions, and for the last few years, carbon is a new dimension on that. Any last thoughts from you?
I think each one is traveling towards the right direction, but I think everyone is working in silos. Yeah, so be it entrepreneurs and startups in this sector, or corporates like Aditya Birla, and many government agencies and nodal agencies, and entrepreneurs like people present here and designers. I think there has to be certain collaboration, because each one is on the track, but I think jointly along with academia also, institute like NIFT, it can create greater impact.
Absolutely well said. Collaboration is the last but the most important component of scaling these up. And there again, some good developments have been having. Today in the Ministry of Textile, we have an ESG task force. One of its major deliverables is that we try to collate all the initiatives happening in under the various platforms and put them in the public space, so that people can join that. In fact, India under the G20 had also started work on a circular platform which FICCI is leading, and there again there is one platform which is trying to collate that. Anybody having interest in any of these can get in touch with me. I can at least join the dots of all that is happening around, because we since City, it works from the fiber till the retail. We are largely in the in so many platforms, but that's another problem. So much is happening, it's very difficult to keep track and to ensure that there's a good traction, and we are inching forward towards being a leader in this space on sustainable fashion, and can also define the circularity space, since that's an area where India already had a leadership because of our good presence in recycling in the Panipat, Tirupur and other clusters. So I think we have some great things to be a leader in the emerging global textile and apparel landscape, including the home fashion segment also, and give more value, not through the age-old craftsmanship that we are carrying, but many other good practices that maybe we haven't leveraged so far, but we need to learn to leverage them better, market them better. So marketing, branding, positioning are also going to be important aspects of this path toward better market linkage. And I hope today's discussion threw some light on what we can do right in that direction. Thanks to both of you for sharing your initiatives in this direction. Thank you.
We would like to extend a token of appreciation for the panelists. I would like... Okay, there's a question.
So this question is to Chandrama. You mentioned circular economy, and I was hoping that somebody else also talks about it, because it's not just one-time effort. It has to be embedded from cradle to grave kind of situation, where we are really looking at the entire life cycle of quality product, especially in textiles, because the amount of waste that is getting generated is humongous, and something needs to be done in terms of whenever we are producing any product. Are there any kind of government initiatives on this, and especially for the high value products? The moment we talk about high value products, heritage products or silk based products, or products which are even in the home furnishing, silk based products are there has to be product passport initiatives which basically take care of the entire life cycle of that particular product. Are we doing something at a organizational level on this, or the government level?
Yes, actually, the various components that will be required for this have been identified. So, in the for the pre-consumer, a lot had been happening earlier, but what you're highlighting is about the post-consumer. There, the first constraint that was observed was this fiber composition, because otherwise circularity was becoming a huge challenge. Earlier, India, of course, had a very cotton-rich feedstock, but now with the never-expanding blend with MMFs, circularity was becoming a challenge. So that's the first step that has been taken. But overall, for all these initiatives, the Department of MSME today has two schemes, the RAMP and the SPICE scheme, which are focusing on enhancing sustainable products and incentivizing sustainable products, which would also include products which are adhering to circularity or are being made from recycled fiber.
Any specific incentives to entrepreneurs to adopt circular economy models in place?
So the SPICE scheme is for the MSME entrepreneurs who are making sustainable products. So the details we'll have to look at, but there is an incentive both for the capital cost on that, as also for reaching out to global markets on that. So you could get more details. That's being done by the Ministry of MSME at the moment. But Ministry of Textiles will also very soon be coming with this from 2-3 aspects. One is for the technology required, especially with circularity. You need technologies for the recycling or the use of the fiber in a more efficient way, as also for the supply chain. So the 2-3 areas where the gaps are, we didn't have any data or benchmarks to start that process, is why the policies could not be framed earlier. So 2-3 things have been done in that area. One is a study has been done to understand what's the landscape, how many people are producing, what is the ecosystem of it, and of course where are the gaps. So these having been largely done, we are sure some policies towards encouraging more sustainable products is coming also.
So just to give an introduction, I've been working in this space for last 7 years now. I'm a technologist, and I've been applying sustainability principles at the textile as IM Khadi Foundation, as well as my own consulting company. But my interaction actually in this thing is now global, with fashion tech as a core subject, and we are really looking at fashion tech entrepreneurs through one of the largest accelerators called Style It, and I've been a mentor to almost about 200 plus entrepreneurs in the last 7 years. I'm the only Indian to be really there on this thing, and though I had very little inroad into fashion, but I was positioning handloom and the Indian traditional heritage products for higher value creation, which is what is there. And it's so happened during the pandemic, or just before the pandemic, I did a National Handloom Stakeholder Summit, and then later on with NIFT Foundation, and then subsequently through Global Spin, 3 technology conclaves where we were able to bring in experts from 40 countries to really debate on this just after the pandemic. So there's a lot of work that we've been doing, and I've personally been involved in terms of, I'm a technologist with about 40 years in the technology space, and I'm very keen to really contribute to some of these developments, because that's what I do as a part of Stylit, as a mentor to a lot of startups in the world. But in India, lesser known. Thank you. Very specifically
Great to know, ma'am. Yeah.
With the IoT, I would like to really know, see, IoT is one area, one of the things in the technology space which we need to really use in marketing is virtual reality based products, especially to market products worldwide. I think we need to really have a special focus on that, and the other is metaverse. See, creating virtual experiences, especially for high-end products, is the way to go worldwide. We have enough talent pool in India to really do that, but that has to be married at the government level. That's what I've been promoting, that it can't be done by individuals. I have been running an accelerator called Smart Edge, and I'm trying to promote these technologies that are the same. Right now, one of the entrepreneurs which won the Ideathon contest that I did in Northeast is basically focusing on the circular economy and how to really create fashion accessories. See, fashion accessory is one very sweet spot that we need to really look at from India, because fashion accessories is easy to really percolate, and we have mass both pre-consumer waste as well as post-consumer waste, and already doing a lot of activities in that both these spaces. But if we really get some incentivization, it will really help to work that through.
Thank you, ma'am. I will connect with you. It will be great to know that where all a policy support can be a good accelerator. Yeah, Sonam.
Hi, Rajiv ji. Really pleasure to meet you. I mean, I work also in the handloom sector as a designer. And the thing is that I've been in the business for the last 25 years, and a lot of designers like us who have actually explored the export market on our own, you know. But we need a simpler version from the government so that we can approach you. Right? Because handloom per se is a dichotomy, because once it gets into a corporation, you actually lose the whole essence of handloom. No? So smaller sectors, like the designers who showed here this time, they have smaller handloom clusters that they work with in various parts. It's just not me, there are a lot of designers like us. So I had a question for you. How is the way to approach you in the simplest way so that you could also liaise with us, you know, collaborate, like she was saying, how important collaboration it is for our country at this point to be together going forward.
To start with, we can meet immediately after this and then take it forward.
Hi. My question is not exactly a question, but an observation and a concern. As a craft lover and a customer, I find that many so-called handloom fairs or handloom bazaars have a lot of machine-made products which claim to be handloom. So as a layperson and as a customer, how does a policy maker and a government ensure that I get value for my buck and I get an authentic handloom product? Because I'm really shocked with the kind of proliferation of machine-made products even with the very well-known artisans. So that's a major concern. You mentioned your initiatives in terms of QR code and all of that. And I don't want to sound cynical, but is it really scalable? Because we have hundreds of clusters and millions of handlooms. So is it really scalable that every meter of fabric which comes out of the loom has some kind of identity? Because we have something called an handloom mark, but I don't think that is so common, and it's not mandatory to use that. So as a craft lover and customer, I'm always confused whether I'm buying a genuine product or not. So anything as a policy maker you can do.
Yeah, I appreciate your concern, and it is a concern for us also. That's why we started looking into how we can resolve it. Now, there are various initiatives that we have taken. Some work, some don't work, but you keep trying all the same. One is that in all the exhibitions, especially that NHDC does, you'll find a signboard there that says that any person who can identify a non-handloom product should report it to us, so that we can take action on that person. So that's people like him who are well versed with the fabric. They can look at it and tell whether it's handloom or not, because we cannot be present all the time. So we do that weeding when they set up the shop. But after that, when you're running it for 15 days, there's some sort of mixing that happens. So we are aware of that, and we try to stop it in that manner. Apart from that, this IoT QR code is definitely scalable. And it's scalable for the finished products. It may not be scalable for fabric length of cloths. In case you're selling than, it may not be scalable. But when you're selling, say, a stole or a firan or anything, of a shawl or a finished dress or a jacket or anything, that's definitely doable. And we have examined that part, and it's doable there. So the only way to do it is to point it out when you don't find it correct. And people who are knowledgeable in the subject and who are already invested in the sector, they are automatically honor bound to point it out in case there is a problem in the product. So that's all I can say here, because I understand that there is a proliferation and there is a problem there. And it affects the artisans more than anybody else, actually.
Absolutely, and it affects the customers also.
Customers still have options of going somewhere else, but that artisan is the person whose say a Banaras sari is, say, for example, branded as, people keep making machine made also, so you can't make out. So that Banaras sari segment itself gets branded as a bad spot. So people avoid that altogether. So the whole artisan community of, say, a Banaras sari, in case it's affected, so gets
that's why the artisans in Banaras, they also run handloom and also run power loom. So they cater to both the segments. So thank you so much, and I just hope the QR tag becomes more scalable quickly, so that craft lovers like us benefit. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your very nice briefing, sir. Actually, say this is Professor Babu, a research scholar in sustainable fashion. We train the students on sustainability. And when a student wants to design a garment in sustainability, we are unable to find the materials that is in the lab. It's not available in the market. See, for example, we have some, vegan leathers. So what is the means where a student who is a researcher can get access to the fabrics, especially the sustainable materials, what we are talking, other than the handlooms, the materials that are in the research? I request City to please answer the question.
No, that's a weak spot that you've spotted. Like you're talking of, many specialty fibers have come now. You have pineapple, you have banana, and a lot of them. But yes, where to source them is something that you'll have to have the market information on that. So it's a good suggestion if these can also be more widely disseminated, so that more people can use that. I don't have any answer to whether it's presently being housed somewhere or not. But it's a good suggestion, because now that we are doing all this towards having a good repository of information to enable people to have sustainable products, so I think that's another area we should look at. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So if it is bamboo, yarn or viscose, we do institution collaboration, and we do have libraries in many colleges. IIHT and NIFT, all these colleges have Birla Cellulose library of sustainable fabric. So viscose and bamboo, post this event, I will give you my connect, we can chat. Thank you.
Hi, I had a question about is there any conversation on revamping cottage industry, cottage stores? I see that we have a very good destination to experience all states, but it needs revamping. It needs more experiential. It needs more thought around merchandising. I think that's a very beautiful way to collaborate, where we can meet artisans, patrons, and creators. Where I was in America for 25 years, and I was craving that for myself. Like, where can I meet the artisan? I'm in Delhi. I go to Cottage Emporium, but the people there may not know that craft very well because they keep changing. And I may not be able to create with them. I just have to buy, and without knowing much. So just wanted to know, as we are experiencing heritage and aligning the future, I think, ma'am, what you said, Priyanka ma'am, what you said about the missing link being the East is not talking to the West, the tourism is not talking to the, culture or textile. I feel a biggest gap there.
It's very timely that you have brought up this question because, incidentally, I also happen to have additional charge of Cottage Emporium. So that's just temporary because the advertisement is out for the new incumbent. So the previous person had resigned and I was holding charge in between. And also, incidentally, a revival package has come in for the Cottage Emporium. So the government is also looking on the same lines that you are thinking. The government of India is also interested in reviving the Cottage Emporium and the industry as such. So, and one of the criterias for giving the revival package is to set up an expert committee who will advise on how to revamp the organization and how to position and curate the space. So I think your issue is addressed there. I only hope it translates on ground as it has been.
Sir, I have a prototype already created in C Block Defense Colony. I created it because I wanted it for myself. So I would love to experience it.
We will certainly exchange notes.
Rennie, you can tell them that you visited that.
We will exchange notes on that, certainly. I think Kunj has been created for that. If you see Kunj, I'm not sure, ma'am, if you've been to Kunj. I think you should visit Vasant Kunj, the Kunj. No, Kunj is open to public. Okay. Okay, but otherwise Kunj is available where in fact the artisans on the ground floor, they set up these temporary kind of interactive workspaces. So they actually are doing their craft while you can sit opposite them and watch them do it and exchange notes on that. It's next to it's in Vasant Kunj, it's next to those malls that are there. It's right next to it. In fact, the DC Handlooms office is also officed alongside it.
Handloom tourism, where you actually have the experience of handloom weaving or any craft.
This provides for that.
That is done at various exhibition centers and this thing. But more importantly, it is actually attracting the international buyer who comes to India and he's come as a tourist, but also wants to really interact with the heritage and the culture of India.
I think there are two spaces that cater for that. One is the Kunj and one is the craft museum that is there at next to ITPO. Both these spaces cater for the kind of thing you're mentioning. May not be in its entirety, but generally the thought of what you're saying is already there, ma'am. In case you think that something should be changed there, then you can revert.
Something more can be done more at the tourism, from the tourism point of view.
It can be looked at, definitely. I will convey that.
Thank you for a lot of thought-provoking questions and remarks. And if there's any more, we can take that offline. But I think we are close. Sorry?
What are your present policies on hemp?
So there is no policy on hemp as such, but today's budget has talked about hemp included on the special fibers and some scheme that they're coming to promote that. So let's look at that.
Hemp is on a state basis, they give approvals to use
yes,
it. So Himachal, as of now, Himachal Pradesh in India has got an approval for, the state government promotes its usage. So it is being used there and it's being using other fabrics to creation of fabrics. Other fibers are being utilized. to make hemp fabrics.
So the license is still hard to
That
acquire.
is state based. So it is
Right.
it's not across all the states of India. Though hemp is grown in many other states, but it's not across all the states. As of now, it's only in Himachal Pradesh.
Sir, previously it was only Uttarakhand and not Himachal. Himachal is
Then I may be
still
mistaken.
slightly-
Then it's Uttarakhand. One of the
Yes.
two has it. Maybe Uttarakhand. You're right. I may be wrong in that. Yeah.
We would like to extend a token of appreciation for our panelists. I would like to invite Dr. Renny Joy, the founder, on stage for this.